Let's go off the grid. Okay. Let's go off the grid. Okay. I know that you really want to put your phone away. Yeah. Let's go off the grid.
Hello, and welcome to Off the Grid, a podcast about creative business and the life without social media. I'm your host, Amelia Fruby, and we are currently in the middle, or actually the very end. We are in the final episode of our Back to Biz Refresh series, which has been a 5 episodes in 5 days series that I'm hosting in mid-August 2026, as many of us are thinking about what our businesses might look like or do this fall. So the Back to Biz Refresh series is about finding fun, supportive, and nuanced ways back to work so that we can be resourced, we can find a little pleasure in what we do before we get to some of the hard work that we have ahead of us, whether that be launching something new, picking up the pieces of a business that isn't really working right now, or just, getting back to logging on every day of the week. Whether you're tuned in right now and you're feeling that same way, or you're listening in the future and it's not at all midsummer, this series was designed to help you get back to business with ease, joy, pleasure, alignment. We did a brand refresh, we did a home office refresh, we did a tech stack refresh, and today we're doing an ambition refresh, taking a moment to get back to what makes us want to do the work we do, checking back in with that desire for growth and life and creation. That is how our guest today defines ambition. Now, before I tell you more about today's guest, 2 quick updates. One is that this series is happening totally for free thanks to our sponsor, Lauren of 9 to Kind. 9 to Kind creates anti-perfectionist planners that are my favorite digital and analog planning tools. I'm a big fan of their digital daily notepad for making quick notes about what I want to get done each day, and I love their annual possibility planner for checking in with my weeks and months as I work toward bigger goals. So if you could use supportive planning tools and resources, I would love for you to check out 9 to Kind. You can head to the show notes for a special link that will get you discount codes exclusively for Off the Grid listeners. So Lauren has offered 50% off 9 to Kind digital planners and 25% off their analog products if you would like to check them out. So head to the show notes, grab those 9 to Kind discount codes, and get yourself a supportive planning tool before we get into the fall season. The other announcement I have for you is that doors to the interweb are opening next week as I release this. So this episode is coming out Friday, August 21st, and doors to the interweb will open Monday, August 24th. So if you're hearing it live, now is the time to get on the wait list, because when I say doors are opening, I mean only to the wait list. Why? Well, because I don't want to market to people who don't care about this. So again, the interweb is our annual membership for creatives, freelancers, artists, small business owners who want to start, grow, or maintain a sustainable creative online business without relying on social media. Inside the membership, we have a library of over 50 classes and workshop recordings. We have 2 to 4 live events per month so you can get to know people and learn new things together. We have a Slack community where we gather to share weekly goals, to check in on different tech questions, to proofread each other's sales pages. There's also a private podcast feed so you can listen to every single interweb call on the go if you can't make it live. And as an interweb member, you get access to me in Slack too, so you can ask me questions, get my feedback on things. I love supporting members in the interweb, and all of that is only $199 USD per year. So it's designed to be incredibly affordable so that it can meet you where you're at, whether you're just starting out in business or you've been doing it for a long time, but you're making some changes, or you feel like you kind of got it figured out. You just want a little more community. The interweb provides all of that, no matter your stage of business, no matter what type of creative or service-based work you do, no matter your relationship to social media, the interweb is here for you. So doors are opening, as I've said, on Monday, August 24th. They will be open for 1 week through August 31st. And then they will close because we're having new member orientation on the 1st. We're having a September intention setting and momentum session on the 2nd. And then we have a ton of great stuff coming in September and October, including a members only email list growth challenge in October, some very cool workshops later in November. There's a lot of great stuff coming up in the interweb this fall. And if you want to hear all about it, head to the show notes to get yourself on the wait list. You'll get my series going behind the scenes and starting my business. You'll get the invitation to join the interweb when doors open to the wait list only. And then you'll get more information about what's coming up in the membership this fall. So thank you so much for listening to my announcements, for tuning into this episode. This series really exists because of Lauren from 9 to Kind and interweb members who support the show. So thanks to everyone involved. Thanks to you, dear listener, for pressing play. And now let me quickly tell you about today's guest and get into the conversation. Amina AlTai is an executive coach, leadership trainer, and chronic illness advocate. She's also the USA Today best-selling author of The Ambition Trap: How to Stop Chasing and Start Living. She's partnered with companies such as Google, Snap, Outdoor Voices, and Roku, and she's been featured everywhere from Goop to Forbes to NBC, CBS, and the New York Times. She's here today to talk to me about ambition and why it is such a fraught pursuit for so many people, especially those of us from marginalized groups or backgrounds. As two recovering overachievers, Amina and I definitely got into it around how ambition has been one of our favorite things about ourselves and one of our most challenging characteristics. But we also speak to folks who have never felt very ambitious or don't really feel like ambition is for them, and ways that you can also stop chasing and start living no matter your relationship to ambition. So I'm really hopeful that this conversation will give all of us the creative energy refresh that we need to conclude this Back to Biz series and get ready for the season ahead. Let's dive in, shall we, to my conversation about ambition with Amina AlTai. Hi, Amina. Welcome to Off the Grid.
Thank you so much for having me.
We have secretly known each other for a while now, or I've known you for a while now because you were a guest on one of my clients' podcasts. And I listened to you talk about ambition, and I bought your book and I read it and I thought a lot about it. And then a few weeks ago, your PR team landed in my inbox to ask if you could come on Off the Grid. And I was like, hell yes, I can't wait. I'm really pumped to have you. It feels like this is years in the making.
I love it. I love when there's that 1 degree of separation and our joint connection is one of the best humans on the planet. So I know that this is going to be a gorgeous conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Highly recommend listeners check out Sarah Tacey's podcast, Threshold Moments, which is where our ideas first connected. And I'm excited to have you here today. So you recently wrote this book, The Ambition Trap: How to Stop Chasing and Start Living. Could you tell listeners a little bit about why you wrote a book about ambition? What makes ambition such a sticky topic for you?
Yeah, I wanted to write a book about ambition and identity specifically because I am someone who felt like you could not separate them. And when I think about it, I think I've been a student of ambition my whole life. I'm the child of immigrants. I'm a woman of color. I'm someone that has invisible disability. And I'm also somebody that's really ambitious. And what I noticed very early into my career is that ambition isn't the same for all of us. And some of us are told to take up space, and some of us are not allowed to take up as much space. I didn't have the language for it in the beginning of my career, but I had this stop moment that opened my eyes to some of the tension. So I started my career in marketing and brand management, and I just came of age, actually just before the girl boss era, in the midst of hustle culture, and was taught to just put your head down, work really hard, and that's how you'll succeed and you'll get all the things that you want in life. And I ended up working so hard that I burned out and I developed 2 autoimmune diseases. And it happened really dramatically where my doctor called to tell me basically that I was days away from multiple organ failure, that I'd gotten so sick that I was basically about to exit the planet. And at that time, I really thought that this was kind of a mess of my own making. And as I learned more and more, one, about myself, about trauma, about my family, about the systems that we operated in, I realized how complex ambition is, especially for historically excluded people. So if you're a woman, a person of color, a queer person, a person with a disability, ambition is even more complicated for us. And I'll just give you this one small example. There's something known as the ambition penalty. And it is the idea that some of us get penalized for our ambition. So men and women enter the workforce with the same levels of ambition. Men are rewarded for theirs. Women, it's seen as a detractor, right? So we have this kind of push-pull double bind with our relationship to ambition. We're told, take up space, speak truth to power. When you do, you're told your stories aren't real, or you're told, hey, take up space in an organization as a person of color or a person with a disability. And then those necessary accommodations aren't made. And then we kind of further exacerbate illness, injury, or disability. And so we're often told to be and not to be in the very same sentence. And so for almost decades, I was sitting with this question of, well, how do I grow and not hurt myself inside of all of this complexity?
Ooh, I feel like you're naming so many really important double binds that you're experiencing, that you've learned more about as you researched your book. And I think that some of them really resonate quite close to home for me. I very clearly felt as a very ambitious kid and as a girl and young woman, like growing up and going through school, I was always very like academically advanced. But I learned really early on that I could be ambitious as long as it didn't look like I was trying too hard. Like if it was effortless genius, people would accept it. But if I was like gunning for it and pushing and competing with other people, that was not what I was supposed to do. I was told that was too much. I got called precocious all the time, like constantly through college, even honestly, not in like a cute way, in a very much like a negative connotation kind of way. And a lot of that, frankly, like it really fucked me up about my ambition because I thought being ambitious was a good thing until I was told that I was too much of it all the time.
Yes. There was an excerpt that I ended up cutting from the book, but it was about Hillary Clinton. And however you feel about Hillary and her politics, they were talking about Hillary and her ambition. And her director of communications was cited in this article. And they said that oftentimes they just got this feedback about Hillary. And the feedback was, quote unquote, there's just something that we don't like about her. And that just something that we don't like about her was women's ambition for power. Right? We have a real problem with women's ambition. Women are policed in so many ways, and this is just another one.
What's coming up for me next is actually like maybe to even pull way back. And I'm just curious, how do you define ambition? Like, what does ambition mean to you?
Yeah. I'm so glad you asked that because I wanted to take us there too, because I don't want anyone listening to be like, but is ambition bad? Because that's also something that I wanted to level set from the beginning. I think that ambition is neutral and natural. Like money, right? Money is actually kind of neutral, but we laden it with a lot of emotions and connotations, and there's a lot of challenges around it, right? But I think ambition is neutral and natural, and I define it as a desire for more life, a wish to grow, a wish to unfold. And what I like about that definition, not to pat myself on the back, but when you think about it that way, that's inherent in every living thing on the planet, right? Anything with cells has a desire to grow, a desire to proliferate, from plant babies to human babies. So it can be right for some people and wrong for others, right? So to level set, from the beginning, ambition's neutral and natural. But there are two orientations of it, which I talk about in the book. There's painful ambition and there's purposeful ambition, which I'm sure we will talk a lot more about.
Let's go there next to talk a little bit about those types of ambition, and then we can circle back to the ambition trap and how we kind of get caught between those two types of ambition. So I love this definition that ambition is our neutral and natural desire for growth. It's literally happening in our cells all the time. I think some of us perhaps feel it as like an emotion or urge more as adults than others, but that's also not a judgmental statement. Like we're all growing and changing at different paces and in different ways. So what makes some ambition painful while other ambition is purposeful? Can you explain this sort of framework to us?
Yeah. So essentially, the framework that I developed is that painful ambition is derived from our core wounds. So Lise Bourbeau, who's a Canadian psychologist, posited that there are 5 core wounds that every single human has 1, 2, 3, or all 5 of. And for every wound, we are a corresponding mask. So the wounds are rejection, abandonment, humiliation, betrayal, and injustice. And for those that haven't heard the term core wound before, it's sort of the original injury of the psyche, and every single human has one. Like it's just a very human rite of passage. Like we will not leave life without having a core wound or multiple. And you can have the best parents on the planet and you'll still have a core wound because it's just a very human rite of passage. And it can happen, at school, on the playground, vicariously, all the ways. And so for every wound, we wear a corresponding mask. So if you have an abandonment wound, which is where you felt a sense of abandonment in childhood, the mask you'll wear is dependence. And a lot of people challenge me on this one because they're like, well, when you've been abandoned, you can be overly independent. And that can be true, of course. But what I notice, especially with my clients, is that they are hyper independent, but then there's one or two relationships where they're really dependent. And they're clinging to it so tightly because they don't want to be abandoned. Then the next one is rejection. This is one of mine. And rejection is when you felt a sense of rejection in childhood, and the mask you'll wear is avoidance or withdrawal. So you'll avoid conflict or throwing your hat in the ring for things because you don't want to feel rejected again. Then there's humiliation, which is when we felt like our caregivers were embarrassed of us in some way. And then the mask we wear is masochism or martyrdom, right? Like, let me hurt myself. Let me carry the weight to prove that I'm worthy. Then there's betrayal, which is when we felt like our caregivers didn't live up to expectations. And the mask we wear is control, where we want to just hold on to everything so tightly because we never want to be let down again. And then the last one is injustice. And that's when we felt like a sense of individuality in childhood was restrained. And that can be in any way, shape, or form, right? That could be across gender, race, body shape, size, like anything. And then the mask that we wear is rigidity or perfectionism, where we have an intolerance for living in an imperfect world. And like I said, we all have 1, 2, 3, or all 5. And I find that some people can find their way easily in through the wound and some more easily through the mask. And so whichever way resonates with you.
This is so interesting. I thought what you were going to say is that painful ambition is the ambitions we get from the outside world, like extrinsic stuff. And purposeful ambition is the ambition that comes from within us. It's the intrinsic stuff. But I love that you have stymied this entirely for me. You're like, actually, they both come from the inside. Like, painful ambition is about the core wound. And this also explains why it can be so hard, I think, sometimes to delineate between painful ambition or purposeful or other ambition, because sometimes we think we're like doing what we want and we haven't surfaced the like core wound that's really navigating that or like really motivating that. Or sometimes we're like, okay, I got off the career ladder. I'm not doing the thing everyone says I should do, but my ambition is still so hard. It's not working. It's feeling painful to me. And it's what I'm hearing you say is like, that's because it can still be connected to your core wounds. You don't have to be a career focused person or like climbing the corporate ladder to be in painful ambition. You could be doing the coolest, most independent, different thing. But if you're doing that from a place of one of those core wounds and masks, it's still going to bring up that pain or ultimately be dissatisfying, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I've been an entrepreneur most of my career at this point, and 50% of my clients are entrepreneurs. And I always say that entrepreneurship is an exercise in shadow work. Like, you are going to meet pockets and parts of yourself that you don't want to meet, right? Like, that's what this work is. And so I think it is an invitation to get clear on where we're coming from, the wound and the pain, and to choose purposeful moment to moment. And it's also not an all or nothing proposition. I notice that we very rarely live entirely in painful, nor very rarely do we live entirely in purposeful. And certain contexts might bring out one more than the other. I notice that, like, when I do corporate leadership training and I kind of go back into the belly of the beast, it's like, okay, I have to watch some of my painful traits coming up again because I'm in that context. And yeah, it's just kind of a moment to moment choosing again, choosing something different.
So before we talk about purposeful ambition, could you actually maybe share an example or two of like painful ambition? Like, how does the core wound or mask manifest in something we're doing in our life, or manifest in like an action of painful ambition?
Yeah, there are so many great examples in the zeitgeist, in the world. It's like almost exclusive painful ambition. When people are like, give me an example of purposeful, then I have to look a little harder.
Yeah.
But one of the examples that I gave in the book, and I share this when I do keynotes too, because I think it's such a good example. And it was being covered in the news cycle when I was writing the book, and I was just fascinated. I was like, thank you, universe, for this example. But it was Sam Bankman-Fried in the infamous FTX scandal. Do you remember this?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I was kind of obsessed with this. So Sam Bankman-Fried, for those that don't know, he was hailed the boy wonder of crypto because he had amassed wealth almost faster than anybody in human history. And he had built FTX, which he basically built it on these risky trading practices that I think existed in sort of a financial gray area. because he was hailed the boy wonder of crypto and wanted to kind of keep amassing wealth faster than anybody in human history, he was kind of in this old paradigm of ambition, right? This more for more's sake all the time. More money, more power, and then I'm going to feel whole, right? But it doesn't work that way. I don't think it works that way. And anyway, so he builds FTX on these risky trading practices. He ends up siphoning company funds for personal use. And then he ends up in jail, bankrupt, costing consumers $11 billion and investors $8 billion. And I'm like, this is such classic painful ambition where you have such a rapacious desire to succeed no matter the cost, right? There's nothing wrong with success, but the no matter the cost piece is the part we look at, that you are willing to lose all this money to hurt people, to like basically take people's life savings, right? Like that is some classic painful ambition if ever I've seen it.
Yeah. Oof. And such an awful impact for so many as a result of that, right? Our ambition, of course, is personal, but the things that we do with it can impact other people. It's not simply, and I like this about your book as well, like you point to the ways that ambition is a social phenomenon. And that means that it's embedded with structural and systemic inequality, and it interplays with, as you've already said, race, gender, class, ability. I also am now thinking too of the example you shared from your own life earlier, right? Where painful ambition leads you to this call from your doctor that's like, go to the hospital. This is urgent, immediate emergency. Your body has said emergency. That can take you to that place as well. So
it can be like as dramatic as Sam Bankman-Fried. I mean, listen, my story was also dramatic, right? But there are like softer taps that we get on the shoulder. But I also find that so many of us don't respond to the soft tap. We wait for the really loud thud, unfortunately.
No, absolutely. I have shared on the podcast before. I'm sunsetting one side of my business as we record this and sort of stepping into podcasting full time. But one of the like taps on the shoulder for years now has been that like I've developed carpal tunnel, I've developed migraines. These are things I can work around, but perhaps I shouldn't. Perhaps there's like some information there for me. I think that is a piece of painful ambition. Like I was working toward this type and degree of business that just like wasn't working for my body. And I didn't want to give it up because I had some ego baked into it. I had money that I was making from it. Obviously, I did not go to the hospital and I did not bankrupt billions, but or I did not lose people billions of dollars. But that's my own, smaller version.
I was going to say that's such a great and beautiful example, right? That's not one to sweep under the rug. It's like your body's sending you messages. And bravo to you for listening, for saying, actually, I think I need to do something different. This is enough of a sign.
And I want to think too, for other folks who are not getting the body message, or they're not don't have that rapacious at all costs ambition. Other ways I've seen this show up with my clients and community members can be burnout. They can just get really burnt out on what they're doing because there's like a misalignment between like, why are they doing it or where is it coming from? So I'm curious then, I don't want to lose purposeful ambition. Can you tell us what purposeful ambition is and why it's different than painful ambition?
Yeah. So purposeful ambition is exactly what it sounds like. It's coming from a more purposeful, more generative, more aligned place. And I'll read you all the qualities of painful versus purposeful just to kind of illustrate it. So in purposeful ambition, we question the systems that have shaped our ambition. So I think, okay, I'm not in this silo, right? In painful ambition, we're completely unaware of what's driving our ambition and the systems that have shaped it. In purposeful ambition, we have this growth mindset, this expansive mindset, whereas painful, it's kind of this binary thinking, this narrow either or fixed mindset. In purposeful, we're driven by purpose. In painful, we're driven by winning no matter the cost. And this is kind of what I alluded to before. It's like, sure, winning's great. Success is great. But the no matter the cost piece is the part we have to look at. If it's costing you your health, your joy, your relationships, your friendships, right? What are we doing? Purposeful ambition is focused on collaboration, using your gifts to help the world. Painful is focused on individualism and hoarding power, right? So I need to shine as the individual to be worthy and to be valid and all the things. In purposeful ambition, we honor our needs. And this is a big one that is tricky for me and for a lot of my clients, right? It's like, who am I to have a need and to put it first and to get that need honored? And then in painful ambition, we instrumentalize our bodies and our minds to get every last drop of productivity out of ourselves and others to get to the goal. And we can see how that's problematic. In purposeful ambition, we're contentment-based. And this is interesting because this one comes up a lot where people are like, how do ambition and contentment work together? They actually work beautifully together. So when I was researching the book, I was reading work from this scholar who was studying contentment in Eastern Bhutan. And it translates into English as this word chokshe. It means unconditional wholeness or the knowledge of enough. And I think it's so beautiful because you can have a desire for growth and more life, but also hold the knowledge of what enough is and the fact that you are unconditionally whole in the process, which I think is so beautiful. Painful ambition, we live in toxic positivity, right? So it's like we are denying all of these other emotions. We only want to look at the positive, whereas actually the healthiest people in the world are the ones that allow space for emo diversity, which is sort of allowing emotions to come and go. And then in purposeful ambition, we take aligned action, but in painful ambition, we move with unsustainable urgency, right? So everything is a fire, everything needs to happen now. And so those are some of the differences.
Where do you find examples of purposeful ambition then, if the world is sort of fraught with painful ambition? And I'm hearing you on that it's not an either or. I think most of us are sort of on a spectrum between them, if not doing both at the same time. But what has purposeful ambition looked like for you or for your clients? How can we sort of see it in the world so we can emulate or find it in ourselves?
Yeah, I think this is such an important question. And I really try to beat this work, but I also struggle with it, right? I have someone that wrote this book because I was struggling with this. One of the biggest things is that I believe ambition goes in cycles. So kind of what I alluded to with Sam Bankman-Fried is that he was kind of living in this paradigm that it's more for more's sake all the time, right? I always have to move the goalpost. I always have to make more money, have more power. And I think in entrepreneurial spaces, we're often told that, right? Oh, you got to 6 figures, now get to multiple 6 figures, now get to 7, now get to 8. And we're always moving the goalpost. And I think ambition is cyclical like nature. So it's this idea that you drop a seed in the ground, right? And you kind of nurture the inner and outer environment, and you have a beautiful growth period in the sun. And then the seasons shift and the petals fall off and you wind down and you go back underground and you rest there. Maybe the ground is even fallow until it's nurtured enough that you can rise again. And I think this cyclical nature is so important. And, when I'm working with clients or people hear me on podcasts, they'll often push back and be like, well, listen, we live in late stage capitalism. That is not possible, right? And I totally hear you. And experience a version of this myself, absolutely. And I think that then, what are the micro ways we can allow the ambition to be cyclical, even in an hour to hour, day to day experience, right? It's oftentimes when people are burned out, people are take time off. And they're like, I can't pay my bills if I do, right? It's well, what are these smaller ways that we can be in the cyclical nature? What are the smaller ways that we can take care of ourselves to allow ourselves to show up fully for the things that we want to show up for?
I feel like at this point, Off the Grid listeners are probably pretty all in on cyclical living and working. I don't think you're going to find the but Amina, I could never slow down among our crew, probably.
Great. Preaching to the converted. I love it.
That said, they definitely have some of the other struggles you're mentioning of not making enough money during a period when they can't work as much or feeling, that crunch of oh, I used to be able to take the summer off, but this year the spring was slow and I don't know if I can afford to do that. Sometimes I have felt this sense of well, cyclical living is something I can afford to do in good, abundant times, but I can't quote unquote afford to do it when things are tight. And it is these crunchy moments when I feel some economic contraction in the world or some energetic contraction in myself where I find myself slip back into painful ambition. I find myself those core wounds come up, the scarcity wounds, the abandonment, the rejection, they surface wildly. I'm always I've healed this, but no, they're still there.
Yeah, I love to come back up at every next level.
So I think the big question I have for you then is how do we relate to our ambition, on the other side of the ambition trap? So maybe you want to talk a little bit about the ambition trap again. We started with the double bind. We've talked about painful and purposeful ambition. How are you experiencing the ambition trap now? And then have you reclaimed your ambition? Have you abandoned your ambition? What do you do with it once you see the trap clearly?
I think ambition is beautiful. I honestly think it's such a magnetic and charming and charismatic quality. I love ambition. I think it's beautiful, right? When we're in right relationship with it. And so I have not abandoned mine. I think I'm constantly asking myself, what is right relationship with it? And I think sometimes once we see the trap, we can have this moment of repulsion, right? Where we do the 180 and we're I want to be so far away from that. And there's no right or wrong way to do this, to run our businesses or to have our careers, right? But I think once we've had that pendulum swing, we often do kind of come back to the middle and we find more of the harmony. So I think that's sort of part of the invitation. It's sure, if you fell in the trap, and it's very easy to fall in the trap, right? Especially in this world that we live in. especially if you're a historically excluded person, right? Like, I think the wage gap is such a great example of this, of like, the wage gap sets us up to work twice as hard to get half as far, right? So it's like, well, how do you not fall in the ambition trap? And then I think like once we start to see it and we can't unsee it anywhere else, then I think we can choose in our own small ways, well, what are the ways that I can do things differently? For example, I think unsustainable urgency is a really interesting one because you could be working in the context of an organization and everything there could be urgent and you could just choose one thing that day that wasn't urgent, right? Or to let your nervous system have a different experience of it. If everything feels urgent and that feels sympathetic to you or that feels dysregulating to you, can you work with that experience and see, well, can this be a parasympathetic experience? Do I have to tax my body because somebody else is saying it's urgent? And I think even that is sort of like an act of defiance and reclaiming our ambition.
I like this example because it really sort of takes me into those like tiny things we can do to sort of push back on not just like painful ambition, but also I just think like the overculture of work in our society and also white supremacy culture as it's embedded in work, right? Because urgency and false urgency is a characteristic of white supremacy culture. And so when we're in an organization that's demanding that, even if, you're a consultant, you're a contractor, you have a client who's a CMO or something, like that urgency can come at us from so many directions. And how can we reclaim some agency in that process? That's a lot of what I'm hearing you say is that actually purposeful ambition can only be rooted in our agency and our humanity. And so when we start expecting inhuman things of ourselves, when we start climbing the corporate ladder or comparing our output to AI or whatever it may be, we will get pushed and pulled in these directions of painful ambition. And also, something I was thinking about as you've been explaining this is success can offer things that seem like the answer to our core wounds, right? So if you have a core wound of rejection, you can get so much visibility and success that you're like, great, nobody rejects me anymore. Or you can get so much power at the top of a corporate ladder that you're like, nobody can ever reject me. I've healed it. You can see the core wound and still think the painful ambition is the response to it. But if any piece of that falls apart, it can like all crumble.
And what happens is, and this is my story too, it's like you get the thing and then you're like, but I feel emptier still, right? Because the thing on the outside doesn't help the pain on the inside, right? It's an inside job and that's where the work has to happen. Honestly, like writing a book was such an experience in doing more work on my rejection wound because nothing asks you to put yourself out there like writing a book. And I tell a lot of my personal story in the book, which was really vulnerable. And I had an experience with the book where I worked really hard on my introduction to tell my story and be honest about my experience, but like not take anybody out, right? And I gave my mom an advance reader copy of the book, and she had an experience around the introduction. So basically, my original rejection wound rejected the work. And I was like, oh my God, this is so beautiful and poetic and helpful for my rejection wound.
Yes.
Because it didn't matter what else happened out in the world. I had experienced the most pain already. It was like actually very healing.
That's a really beautiful story. And I always think that books are just these like major dark nights of the soul. Like publishing, especially a first book, really brings up like all of these dreams we have for like what a book will mean. And a book can rarely be all of those things unless you are, like the Sarah J. Maas of the world or something. And even then, I think it gets really complicated and hard in other ways.
It's a spiritual assignment.
Yeah, absolutely. I've only written books that I had to write. I've never approached a book of like, well, this will be fun. Maybe I should.
I love books, plural. You are amazing.
So I love talking to you about the ambition trap. I feel like we've kind of outlined the ways that, especially for folks from marginalized groups, we get told to be ambitious. Because we make less money on the dollar than cis white men, we get kind of forced to be ambitious to support ourselves and make money. And then we get penalized for being ambitious because we're told we're trying too hard, we're aggressive, whatever it may be. There are like sort of different stereotypical responses depending on your specific identity, I believe. And so we've talked about the double bind of ambition. We've broken down painful versus purposeful, how like ambition can be rooted in our core wounds or rooted in a new set of values that we're taking on for ourselves and ways to sort of identify that. And we both talked about how we love being ambitious and we've had to like grapple with that and sort of reclaim it for ourselves. I'm so curious what you would say to someone who's like, I've never been that ambitious. What are you talking about, Amina and Amelia? Like ambition? First of all, if you're that listener, like props to you for tuning in and staying tuned in. This question is for you. What do you think about people who just like don't feel ambitious or identify with ambition at all?
Yeah. Okay. So when I was socializing the conversation of ambition as I was writing the book, people kind of fell into two camps. So camp A was, I've been really ambitious and that ambition has been expensive and it's cost me something. So like me and you. And then there was camp B that was like, I've only seen a dysfunctional version of ambition, so I reject it altogether. And then there were some people that kind of fell in between. I always got really curious about the camp B. And I was talking to this one woman and she was like, oh my God, ambition is disgusting. Like I've only seen like this gross version of it. I totally reject it. And then she was telling me about how she parents, about like how conscious she is for her daughter and thinking about the environment that she's creating for her, the stimulus that she creates for her, nervous system support, all these things. And I was like, well, that's purposeful ambition if ever I've heard it, right? I hear that you have a desire for more life as a mother, as a parent, in the way that you cultivate this environment, right? And I think this is another really important part of the reframe here, is that ambition isn't just about our business or our career. We can have a desire for more life in any area of our lives, from our friendships to the way that we parent, to our siblings, to nurturing a garden. You can direct that ambition any which way. It's simply a desire for more life. And so I always get really curious when people are like, nope, not me, because generally speaking, there is at least one area that you have that desire.
Yeah, I would hope so. And if not, I would hope maybe you're talking to somebody about that.
Exactly, right? Like the feeling of aliveness is like partly what makes us human, right? And if we're not experiencing that in some place, yeah, please talk to someone.
You know, I'm hopeful that folks tuned into this can identify areas of their life where they're feeling that like desire for more aliveness. And because this is a business and marketing podcast, I assume many of them are feeling that in their businesses. And as I've alluded to a few times already, it's also been a hard year for many small business owners, especially the folks I work with who have tiny businesses that were like really grappling to be profitable in the first place. And then this year has kind of knocked them down quite a bit, whether it be because of all of the tariff strife at the beginning of the year, because the rising grocery prices are like knocking down people's disposable income. And now, you know, they're not buying from the Etsy shops. Like there are just so many reasons. Or I've worked with folks whose like DEI work has totally dried up under this administration. There are a lot of reasons that people are struggling in business right now. And I think from that place, it can be hard to connect with your ambition, or it can feel like actually being ambitious just leads to disappointment, right? Sometimes I feel like you can be purposefully ambitious, but you don't get the results that you want. That doesn't mean that whatever you want to happen happens, right? Just because it's coming from the place of that more like alignment with your desires. So I wanted to have you on really, now that we're here, to talk a little bit about how we can like refresh our ambition. How can we reconnect with that desire for more aliveness? And how can we maybe, you know, sort of find some new ways to approach that desire and our work in the season ahead? Do you have any thoughts on like, if you want to sort of re-spark your ambition, you see the ambition trap, you're back to reclaiming your ambition, but you just want to feel that excitement and aliveness again? What advice would you have for folks in that position?
Yeah, first of all, I'm like really feeling into the energy and the sadness of like what happens when you work really hard and you don't get where you want to go. And I just like want to sit in a circle and hold hands with you all because I've really been there. I've been there like more times than I can count. So when I go to therapy, literally my therapist laughs at me all the time because like my refrain all the time is like, it's just not fair. And she's like, yeah, life is not fair. Like, welcome.
It's a real bummer.
It is, yeah. And so it's not fair. It's not fair that you are working so hard. It's not fair that you have put your heart and soul into something and you cannot get to the place that you want to go to. It's not fair, right? And I think like that's an important level set of like, this world is not fair. And it doesn't mean that your dreams don't get to exist. In fact, I think it's a real and important act of resistance that our dreams do exist. Like that's what gets me up every single time. Like I've experienced more failure than like a lot of my peers. Like I fail all the time. For anyone that's into human design, I'm a 1-3 manifesting generator. Our design is to fail all the time and like learn from the failure.
I'm a 3-5, so that's relatable to me.
Yes. Yes. It's wild out here, right? I'm also a Scorpio, right? And so I feel like my life is like the constant tower card in tarot where it's like pulling down the tower to rebuild the tower. So I really feel you all. And I think about business and career as like an endurance run. And in an endurance run, we don't sprint all the time. It goes back to this sort of cyclical idea, right? We don't sprint all the time. Sometimes we're resting at the water table. Sometimes we're jogging. Sometimes we floor it, right? And so I think we have to be really gentle with ourselves and kind of in the cyclical nature. But as I was saying before, it's like, I think it really is an act of resistance for our dreams to exist. And my friend Amber Lillistrom always says, if the dream is in you, it's for you. And that gives me so much hope, right? And hope is radical. And so if the dream is in me, it is for me, and I'm not going to hurt myself to deliver on the dream, but every day I'm going to take action towards it. I'm also a student of nervous system work. And in the body of work that I have studied, we say decide, take action, observe, respond. I break that down every single day, every single hour, right? So when I feel defeatist or I don't know where to go, I'm like, okay, what's the one decision I can make right now? What's the one action I can take against that decision? Can I observe what happens as a result of that action? And then can I respond accordingly? And we'll make the whole journey that way, right? Because I think sometimes from the place of despair, we'll look and we'll say, well, that is 10,000 miles away. There's no way that I'm going to get there. But if every hour, every day I say, can I decide, take an action, observe, and respond, we're going to make some headway. The other thing I'll say too is I do think we're in a bit of a black swan moment, right? So it's like you never know what's going to happen in a black swan moment. But I've been an entrepreneur now on and off for 2 decades. And what I do know is the tide goes out, but the tide comes in. And so if we can find ways to kind of steady ourselves in the moments of uncertainty, like one of the things that I really had to drill into myself was, I know we're not talking about the tactical pieces of this, but I think this is important. But one thing I really had to drill into myself was cash flow management, right? It's like when the season is bountiful, put out the buckets and collect the extra. Do not be splurging the extra on this like shiny new thing that you wanted to, right? And I was like queen of that. I lit a lot of money on fire. I'm not going to lie to you. Kind of really learning of like, put the bucket out, get the extra, because there is going to be a season where the tide goes out again and you're going to need that extra. But the tide goes out, the tide comes in.
I appreciate that. And I have been, for listeners tuned in, there is a fall series coming with entrepreneurs who have built multiple businesses, had businesses totally like fail, go debunk, the next one rise even higher than the last one did. Very much the spirit of part of being in business is staying in business or being willing to go out of business to come back into business. Like I really like the endurance metaphor that you're using or the endurance run metaphor. And also that tip about just like cash flow, I think is really important as well. And something I'm experiencing right now, like I am not someone who's ever made a ton of money in my business. I have not hit multiple 6 figures, but I've been very tight with my spending sometimes. I'm grateful now to have some of that on hand when things have gotten hard. And it's just so hard because another trap that we get caught in, especially as people who earn less than others, like is that when you finally have the money, you should get what the other people have, right?
It's really hard, right? It's like kind of the feast famine piece of entrepreneurship. And I've worked some of these steps too, but I have a lot of my clients look at, I love 12-step programs. I think the essence of them is really incredible. And there's one called Under Earners Anonymous, and they have you look at the ways to under earn and sort of the behaviors associated with those things. And listen, all of that has to be looked at in the context of a really unfair and unjust system. We cannot extract that, but there are also probably ways where we're taking ourselves out, you know? And so I think it's a both and. And that's kind of what I wanted to underscore in the book too, of like, this is all a both and of like, we all have stuff on our side of the street and also we're operating in this unjust system.
I think we have to recenter at our own agency just to find wholeness, make it through, keep going. If we don't believe we have any choice, any power, any ability, then it's really hard to keep moving forward in any way. And we have to do that within the context of understanding that we live within white supremacy culture, that late stage capitalism is really grinding and crunching a lot of us. And I think that in the midst of all of that, it's been really nice to kind of meet you in that place and think about ambition and what does that mean for those of us who have always felt ambitious and had to grapple with that, as well as for those of us who maybe have had a quieter way of like tending the things that we want to bring more life to.
If I could just have like a soapbox moment,
Please.
look, I actually think that this is the time for more purposeful ambition, right? Because there's so many dysfunctional versions in the world. There's so many of us that are feeling crunched. Now is the time to pass the mic to people that want to do it in like a beautiful, purposeful, generative way, right? I think now is the time to kind of like double down on like what's our impact and like how can we support our communities. And I think like now is the time more than ever, just because like with everything that AI is reshaping and the extraction of humanness, right? We need more of that human desire for life and that desire to take care of each other as a collective.
Yeah, that's such a beautiful note, I think, to wrap up on. And it also just reminds me that like so much of what we're watching fail or fall right now is actually all the results of painful ambition.
Yeah.
It's like all these structures built on core wounds. It's all these systems that were never meant to serve any of us. And like for those of us who were already rooted outside a lot of that, this can be our moment. And that's a really beautiful and I think powerful reminder that I'm grateful for today. So, Amina, is there anything else you want to share with listeners before we sign off?
No, I mean, this was so beautiful. I'm so grateful for your stewardship in this conversation and just the way that you held it. You're wonderful and magical.
Thank you. Well, the feeling is mutual. Can you tell listeners where they can find your work and how they can connect with you beyond this episode?
You can learn more about me on Instagram at Amina AlTai, or if you're not on social, on my website, aminaaltai.com. And I'm sure the spelling will be in the show notes. And if you're curious about coaching, you can find all kinds of info in both spaces. And then if you're interested in the book, it's called The Ambition Trap, How to Stop Chasing and Start Living. And you can get that everywhere you buy books, whether that's your favorite national chain or local indie bookstore, they can order it for you.
Beautiful. That will all be linked in the show notes. And secret final question, will you be bringing back your podcast? Because I miss it.
Oh, that's so nice of you. Oh my God, thank you. Bless you. I appreciate that. I have been thinking a lot about it. If I do, it's going to be like an evolution and a slightly different topic. Something that I'm like really chewing on and very interested in right now is ethical entrepreneurship. I think because the systems are crumbling and we do need a new way of doing and being, like what does that look like? And I don't have the answers, but I really want to talk to some people that do.
Oh, I love that. Well, it's been I'm going to change your life. So maybe it's I'm going to change your business.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to change this broken system.
There we go. Just a minor project for you. Well, thank you so much again, Amina, for joining me today. Thank you, listeners, for tuning in. I would love to see you in the clubhouse or the interweb if you want to talk more about refreshing your ambition as we head into fall. And until next time, you can find us off the grid.
I kinda hate social media, feeds on my brain like a bacteria. If you read my Wikipedia, it'll say I kinda hate social media. Post a picture of myself, sacrifice my mental health, use your product, time to sell. I would rather go to hell. Do you like this? Leave a comment. Can you share this? Will you wear this? Do you like this? Leave a comment. Can you share this? Will you wear this? Okay.
That was an abridged version of Social Media by Surfer Boy and Rectangle. To hear the entire song, find Surfer Boy on Spotify or head to the link in the show notes. Thanks so much to them for sharing the song with us, as well as to Melissa Caitlin Carter, who sings our theme song that you hear at the start of every show. I'm your host, Amelia Fruby, and if you enjoyed this episode, I hope you will download the free Leaving Social Media Toolkit at offthegrid.fun/toolkit. Until next time, I will see you off the grid.